Hello and welcome. My name is Robert Talbert, and I'm an associate professor in the mathematics department at Grand Valley State University here in Allendale, Michigan in the United States. Right now, you're studying about the role of lectures in evidence-based teaching practices. Now, some folks may believe that evidence-based student-centered teaching practices exclude all notions of lecture, but actually that's not totally the case. When done with the right framework and given in the right context and with the right goals in mind, I feel like lectures can be a powerful tool in your arsenal for helping students to learn. I've been asked to talk a little bit about how I use lectures in my math and computer science courses here at Grand Valley. Now, lectures for me occupy an important but somewhat different space in my teaching plan than you might be used to. I'm using what's known as a flipped learning model for my courses. In flipped learning, which you might know as the flipped classroom, direct instruction, such as you might get through a lecture, is moved out of the class meeting times and given to students to watch before class happens. Then class time, which is now totally freed up because the lectures have been moved, is then refocused on creative applications of the basic ideas that they learned in their lectures. So in a flipped class, students are still getting the lectures, but in quite a different way than students in a lecture-based class would get them. Now, this kind of different setup has really forced me over the years to think carefully about what a lecture is and how to construct one, and that's part of what I'm going to share with you now. I think this will be of use to you no matter what kind of classroom model you're using, whether it's flipped or otherwise. So I plan on splitting up what I have to say into three segments. First, I'm going to talk about my overall design philosophy behind lectures, aspects of the flipped classroom that drive that philosophy, and the roles that lecture play in the flipped classroom. Then I'm going to move on to talk about two different kinds of lectures that I give to students that have different goals and different methodologies and use different tools. One of them is what I call the talking head lecture, and the other one is called the working example lecture. So let's dive in.
So as I said, I practice the flipped classroom form of course design, where the emphasis of the class meetings isn't on information transfer, but rather it's on application and having students work on the hardest tasks while I am at my most accessible to them. Now this means that what direct instruction they do get has to take place before class. Now part of that direct instruction is in the form of simple reading from a textbook, but other parts of the instruction that my students get come in the form of short lectures. The idea is that the students are going to use the direct instruction to learn just enough to launch the in-class activity that is coming up. Now, if you want to learn more about the flipped classroom, I'd highly recommend the three websites that I'm putting here on the screen, particularly this one at the Flipped Learning Network, as well as the other documents there. Now, since my students are getting direct instruction before class, it means that any lecturing that I do needs to be recorded so they can actually get to it. Now, the way that I record lectures is by way of a process known as screencasting. A screencast is a recording that's made of an action taking place on a computer screen, usually with a voiceover to explain what's going on. And in fact, you are looking at a screencast right now. I have my presentation software running on my computer, and I have another program recording the action as I flip through the slides. And I have yet another program that's recording my voice. And I'll be explaining how to do all of this in the next two videos. The one thing I am not doing right now is standing up at a board and lecturing while being captured on video using a regular video camera. Some people do record their lectures this way to great effect, but I don't for two different reasons. One, I use a lot of technology to illustrate points in direct instruction, and it's easier to show the results of, say, a GeoGebra construction or the output of a Python program if I'm recording a screen. And two, this is personal, but I just really hate seeing myself on camera. So let's talk now about what I use the screencasts for. I actually have a pretty targeted approach to what I want these screencasts to do for my students. First, the screencasts that I make are used to provide direct instruction on the basic concepts and computations of the instructional unit that's coming up. They are not used to replace the book that we have for the class, but rather to summarize it and supplement it. For example, for my calculus class that's flipped, I created for each section in the textbook a 2 to 3 minute quick overview video that summarized the main points of the section. Here's a link to an example if you want to go check it out. And other screencasts might provide additional worked out examples over and above what are in the book, or maybe an alternative explanation for something that students read in the book, but the screencasts don't replace the book. Second, the screencasts that I make are used to provide a model of how professionals think, make decisions, and solve problems. This, I think, is the main benefit of a lecture, no matter what the medium. Lectures provide an opportunity for an expert to provide perspective to novice learners who are listening, and this is super, super important. So when I sit down to do a worked example kind of screencast, as we'll see a little bit later, I'm not simply telling my students, start here, then write this down, then do this and this and this, and then you'll have the right answer. I'm quite intentional instead about thinking out loud as I work through a problem to let them hear what's going on in my head. Especially in mathematics classes, novice learners tend to think that there's only one right answer to a problem, only one way to work it. That way is always simple, and if you don't see it immediately, then you're lost. Now, that is not how professionals do it, and I want to use my screencast to show them how it really works. Third and finally, the screencasts that I make are there to provide a corpus of worked examples and explanations that students can use for future study forever. All our screencasts here in the math department at Grand Valley are open on YouTube and free to use under a Creative Commons license. The idea here is that the entire body of course lectures is there, free, available on any device and at any time, and it makes for a really rich working environment for students in the class, and once they are on to their next class if they need to review. So now that I've talked about the role of screencasts in the course, let me share 4 screencast design principles that I try to stick by when I make these, and I feel like these apply equally well to lectures that are not given in a screencast. First is keep it simple. I like to have screencasts focus on one idea at a time, one important concept or one important calculation, rather than a number of these combined into a single video. It's actually quite hard for students sometimes to stay focused on a video, despite the fact that they're inundated with video in their lives. So the simpler the composition, the better. Secondly, keep it short. Psychological research suggests that the average attention span of a college student is well short of 15 minutes long. Now, I found that I get the best results with my students consistently when the videos are in the range of 5 to 6 minutes at maximum. Any more than that, and students tend to zone out toward the end and end up missing something important. In keeping videos short, it does help to remember the first principle to keep them simple. So rather than make a 15-minute video with 3 examples in it, I feel like it's much better to make 3 5-minute videos of one example each. And if you're thinking about this in terms of a live lecture, the same principle applies. Rather than give a 15-minute stretch of lecture, you can give 3 5-minute stretches or 5 3-minute stretches with breaks or activities in between. Thirdly, keep it real. I've already mentioned that the main purpose of the screencasts that I make is to model the decision-making and problem-solving processes of expert learners. So I want to talk freely in each screencast about my thought processes and potential issues that come up when I solve a problem. It's definitely the case that one well-thought-out example that covers all the plausible angles of problem-solving is better than 5 examples that churn through the work but offer no insight or perspective on how the work is done. Fourth and finally, keep it good. We should be striving for professional quality production as much as possible. Now, this means, first of all, that we have to be intentional about researching and planning the presentation we're going to record so that we aren't winging it when we record. And also thinking intentionally about the visual layout and the evolution of the presentation as it happens. Doing 10 minutes of Google searching to research the problem we're presenting and then just recording something off the cuff might give us a folksy and charming video, but it's more likely to produce a confusing mess. And at any rate, that's not what professional educators do, and it's certainly not professional quality. Quality also means we strive to produce the best video and especially the best audio that we possibly can. Maybe not at the level of a professional recording studio, but at least using good tools and taking care to have a product that helps students learn and a product of which we can be proud. And speaking of audio, I just want to say that many of my students can put up with bad video, but nobody can put up with bad audio. So that's the end of this first video, and I hope you've gleaned some things out of here that you can use, whether you're screencasting or giving live lectures. In the next 2 videos, I'm going to be digging into the nuts and bolts of the 2 different kinds of screencasts that I make. First up is the talking head screencast.